Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good whatever time of day it is. Thank you for tuning in to Conversations with Dr. Don. This show is produced and broadcast from the Portland, Oregon area. For your first-time viewers, Conversations with Dr. Don is an ongoing series of one-hour standalone talk shows where I interview interesting people like most of you out there about who they are as unique one-of-a-kind individuals and about whatever it is we've decided to talk about. Tonight we'll be talking about the importance of preparing an advance directive. The importance of preparing an advance directive. And my guest, of course, is Rick East.
Hey, Don.
Good to have you on again.
Yeah, thanks.
And Rick, among other things, is involved in becoming a producer in his own right here at TBC TV, and he's doing very well as a student and learning everything about how to produce shows and operate the equipment and everything else. And he's doing a marvelous job. I've never had anybody in training or being schooled in how to do this who's attentive and as thorough as you are. And I'm really impressed. And Ellery and I, who is our director here, feels the same way about you.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
We both love you.
You're not going to kiss me, are you?
Not today.
Okay, good.
So what do you want to talk about mostly tonight? The importance of preparing an advance directive. And we'll do the second half of the show pretty much about the advance directive and comments relative to that. The first part is the bio again, because we have a viewing audience that varies, so maybe they haven't seen the earlier shows that you were on as a guest, and they haven't seen, maybe they've seen a few of the ones that were in the control room. But anyhow. So, okay. Now my guest and I will tell you a little about who and how we are personally. And you've seen this show enough where you know my personal story, so we'll just skip that part. And we'll go to Rick.
So what do you want to talk about?
If I ask your best friend, who is Rick? What would your best friend say? Rick is?
He's one heck of a guy.
Oh, he is?
Yeah.
Oh, why would your best friend say that?
Yeah, I don't know. It's just true. No, I'm just messing with you. I think my best friend would we just like to have fun, loyal, and enjoy life.
He'd say that about you?
Yeah.
You say you like to enjoy life?
Yep.
What's the proof of that?
You're gonna put me on the spot. I'm doing this show. That's coming on doing the show. I like to do.
That's an example that you enjoy life.
It actually has. A lot of different topics that we discuss and get into. Yeah. So.
See, I'm jumping ahead of your script here. We're just having a conversation first. So
yeah.
Just relax on the script because we're gonna get to that.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, but you asked me all these hard questions about, what would your friend say about you? To be honest with you, I don't know. I really don't know.
You have no idea what your best friend would speculate. What would your best friend be? Your best friend and pretend you're your best friend.
I would go back to loyal and having fun. I think that's.
He'd say Rick is loyal and he loves to have fun.
Yeah.
You don't know how to go in the first person, do you? Listen, you can fire back at me. This is a two-way street, you know.
Yeah, I know it is. I'm loading up for you.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's a matter of getting relaxed, and if I catch you off guard, then you're not locked into the script. We're more conversational and more friendly. Good thing I like
Friendly Don, yeah.
Yeah. So when and where were you born, Rick?
Sacramento, California.
California boy.
Yep.
You ready for your next tricky question?
Look at this.
Cow, all right.
Yeah, a bear.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why were you born?
Why? Hopefully to do something good for humanity along the way. So.
You kind of like humanity, huh?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah, I think there's a lot we can do. I think taking life from a positive and a compassionate point of view, and I probably latched onto that more as I've gotten older.
Mm-hmm.
But that's I think why I hope that I help out a little bit, leave it a little better, at least in my section of the world, when I leave.
Your section of the world?
Well, it depends on how far you reach. You know, like remember Kennedy said that shape the times in which you pass. He did it as president of the United States, so he had pretty wide reach. Most powerful man in the world at the time. My world is a lot smaller.
Yeah.
You know, here in Beaverton, Oregon, and with my family spread different places.
Mm-hmm.
But you make a difference in the paths that you cross.
Sure. So you like Jack Kennedy?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Why?
Part of it was just his personality. I think as a leader, he had a confidence and he had a way about him. I don't know all the details of everything that they dealt with, but at least from things like the Cuban Missile Crisis, and he was probably not too evolved on civil rights. That happened later on.
Yeah.
But I feel like he was a dynamic leader. I always love watching his press conferences. Still to this day, if they have Jack Kennedy on one of those, it's like almost like watching Saturday Night Live. He was pretty good in those.
I do an announcement ahead of time here. You can probably guess that Rick and I are probably on the same page in a lot of political and social issues, and I apologize for that. But I think you can put on your right-wing hat and answer some of these questions like a right-winger. Can you do that?
Oh, I can do that. Yeah.
Okay. How about your racial, national, or cultural heritage? Anything significant about
Swedish and English.
Swedish and English?
Yeah, half and half on both sides of my family. So my mother was half English, half Swedish. My father was half English, half Swedish.
That's pretty simple, isn't it?
Yeah, it is pretty simple.
Do you any foreign languages? Do you know any foreign languages?
No, I wish I would have kept up Spanish because you can use that every day.
Yeah.
But it didn't do it. And then took French, then forgot it, and because you don't use it. And so no, I know English.
Nihon de wakarimasu ka?
Comment allez-vous?
Comment allez-vous? Back to your French again. that was in Yokohama. I was in the occupation in Japan in World War II. So I learned a few phrases, a few words in order to get along in the cabarets and with the girls, you know.
Yeah, did you grow a mustache so you looked older so you could get in? I did that when I was 18. Yeah, I didn't. I was shaven face, and then I wore a mustache for many years, and then finished it out here. But the original reason was I had a real baby face, and if I grew a mustache, maybe I could sneak in. It didn't work. Yeah. It was worth a try, though.
How about religious preference? Do you have one of those nowadays?
Well, I guess formally I'm Jewish. I converted to Judaism late in life with my wife was born and raised, and we raised our family. So eventually, looking for some spirituality, I did convert. I kind of recently, or last few years, taken a more broader view of spirituality in terms of the universe, and I probably have a broader view than I did before. But that would, I'm not much on the formal religion, going to church or synagogue every week and all of the rituals, but I do believe in the spiritual part of it.
Interesting. Now, as a little boy, did you have a different view of religion? Were you Presbyterian or Catholic or whatever?
Presbyterian.
Uh-huh.
And excuse me, my family was full of ministers. So we have my uncle, my grandfather, there was one cousin, and right now my brother-in-law is a Presbyterian minister in Burbank, California.
How can you miss the opportunity? That you should be following that path.
No, I don't. I think that's what my mom wanted. I didn't see that path for me.
Yeah. How about your formal education? You got a few comments about that?
Well, I studied economics at Cal, And then I did end up getting a master's degree in business administration. I was working in the electronics industry in the Silicon Valley in the 70s and 80s and early 90s before I moved up here.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was mostly business. Very interesting industry. I don't always feel like it was necessarily my calling, but you get involved with something and then you do pretty well, and it was definitely a happening place to be part of. So I enjoyed it, but sometimes I wonder if that was really my way, because I started out in, just kind of refer to it as a default career sometimes. You start work and you just get into it and keep going, and it worked out well for us anyway.
Yeah. Do you still work?
Nope, I'm retired, about 2.5 years.
2.5 years?
Yeah.
Are you adjusting to it pretty well?
Yeah, but I'm busier than I was, getting involved with a lot of new things. This is when I want to not do what I'm doing. I want to do find out more about what I want to do. When you're on your headstone, I don't want to have electronics industry person. I'd rather have something else that's more about me. The electronics industry is what I did, not who I am, and I would rather eventually have something more about who I am.
I got an idea for your headstone.
Well, let's don't go carving it yet, okay? Just
here lies Rick, who walked the talk. Is that true?
Sometimes. I'm sure I'm like everybody. Sometimes we talk a lot and don't always carry it out. I'm sure of that. But
yeah,
try to walk the talk when you believe in something or you're espousing something. If you're not doing it, absolutely meaningless then. So.
Well, I like to think that most of the time I walk the talk, and sometimes it's a little difficult. And that's a bit of bragging, which I shouldn't be bragging about walking the talk, because there's a lot of people who I admire hugely who walk the talk. And
yep.
We'll get into that.
Yeah, we need more of that.
Mm-hmm. And you have a partner, of course.
Mm-hmm. My wife, Caroline.
And what are you going to do tonight when you leave here?
When we leave here, well, we're going to have dinner, and then we're going to be late night going down to the hospital. And she has a little surgery scheduled. So tonight's a little different kind of night. This weekend we had our 39th anniversary, so it was supposed to be snowing, and it turned out it didn't in our area, which was great because we went out to dinner and we had the whole restaurant to ourselves.
We're in Portland, where we were supposed to have a snowstorm, and we didn't, but you survived it, not having the snowstorm.
Oh yeah, Snowmageddon was Nomageddon in our area. Yeah.
And you have a daughter?
2 daughters.
2 daughters.
Mm-hmm.
Say a few words about them.
Well, my older daughter, Jackie, she's living here in Beaverton. She works for
a suburb of Portland, Beaverton.
Yeah, a suburb. She is working for a construction company that contracts with Intel Corporation over in Hillsboro.
Mm-hmm.
And so she's pretty busy there. And my younger daughter, Julie, works in Hillsboro. She's an addiction counselor, a master's in licensed master social worker. And she is very busy. She lived in New York for about 7 years and worked in advertising, and then decided that wasn't for her and went back to school and got her master's and got into social work, and then decided to come back here to Oregon and practice. So we were glad when she came home.
I bet.
But the kids are busy. The kids are in their 30s now. Yeah.
It's amazing how the years sneak by like that. You find yourself saying those kinds of things there.
Yeah.
I have 5 kids, and the oldest one is 60-something. I don't know. And you have any grandchildren?
No grandchildren.
Yeah. And need I ask this question? Your political persuasion, or your left, center, or right?
I'm center, I would think, and I'd probably be right of center on fiscal issues, and a little left of center on social issues.
But I thought you were a Trump supporter.
What did you? No, I never said that.
I know you didn't. Get a rise out of you.
Yeah, no, I'm not.
How can you consider yourself a centrist and yet I can tell that you really love Trump?
Why do you keep saying that? I can
Because I want to get a rise out of you, that's why.
Actually, I can't wait for 2020. I've already been
That's what I really
yeah, I've already been designing bumper stickers for that. Although it's going to be interesting because the Democrats are going to have the cast of thousands like the Republicans did last time for the primary, and to see who finally emerges. And that'll be interesting to watch. But I don't want to get into too much of my personal opinion about Trump, but
Sure.
I don't think he respects the office of the presidency, and I just can't wait till we have somebody who does.
Well, how come there's no Trump supporters coming on my show? Almost always there's some at best, a centrist.
Well, we got to go find some then. If you want some, we'll find some.
Okay.
I'm sure we can find somebody who'll stir it up.
Okay.
It just won't be me. I'm not.
Hey, okay. I think I asked you this before when you were a guest, but because you talk about spirituality 2 or 3 times with a kind of a look in your face that means something to you than the average person when you say what spirituality mean. So this next question says, what's the difference between sympathy and empathy? That has to do with something about spirituality too, I think.
Yeah, well, I don't know. Definition-wise, sympathy to me is just kind of feeling sorry for someone or their situation. And empathy is, actually walking in their shoes, maybe feeling their pain or feeling their more about what their existence is.
Yeah, and I've asked this question a lot of times, and occasionally I refine it and get a little more nuance on what it really means. And for me, empathy is more that as an experience. If I'm empathetic with what's going on with you, you can see it in my eyes. I hear it in my tone of voice. There's something about me. It's a feeling sort of a thing.
Yeah, it's more. It's a different kind of feeling than feeling sorry. Somebody loses someone. That's kind of sympathy. But the empathy more. And maybe you can look at people who are down on their luck or something and not feel necessarily sorry for them, but you may have a time in your past where you experienced something similar, so you can relate to what they're going through.
Yeah, I don't want to go back to any of those at this moment.
No.
I had some of those times.
Yeah, you don't want to do that.
Yeah, but memberships in political, social, or civic organizations.
No, I'm not a joiner.
Uh-huh.
No, I'm an independent, not involved with any particular party. I vote for individuals who line up best. If I find someone doesn't line up well enough, then I write in my vote. And some people will say that's a waste, but no, it's not. I'm voting for who I want to. Now, my guy didn't win, or a gal didn't win, but I'm not just going to give a vote.
If you're stuck on who to vote for when you're filling out your ballot, remember me.
You want me to write you in? Okay. Which do you have any?
Even though it's a
any
lie.
any particular office that you want?
Name it.
Okay. So I'll just you'll be my default.
Okay.
When I get stuck, you'll be Dr. Don.
Okay. Persons from the past are alive today that you particularly like. Any names come to mind for you?
Well, I've always gone back to the same person. In history, is Abraham Lincoln for me. That's the most interesting. In fact, I'm reading Doris Kearns Goodwin's book for the 4th time. It's such a big book, and it does such a good job not only of just talking about Lincoln, but the rivals in that presidential election and many of the real characters from the time and how they interrelated. So every time I read it, I find something new that I didn't get. I'm starting to not find as much of that in the 4th time through it. But and the reason for Lincoln, I think he was, he came out of the blue. There's no way at the time really that you ever would have believed he would have gotten the nomination. let alone, but then conditions worked for him to, and his strategy. He was a smart guy, and he was good at timing to get the nomination. And then at the time, the fracturing of the Democratic Party put him over the top, so that this little-known guy wins the election. He turns out to be just what was needed at the time. He was a magnanimous individual, complete opposite of our current White House occupant. Mm-hmm. He took the blame for things that didn't go well, and he gave credit to the people when things went right. He thought through issues. He may not always started on what would be considered the right side or the side that he ended up on, but as he studied and took a view and a position on it and made up his mind, and he usually didn't reverse himself. He would go forward. Timing, I think, one of the biggest things that he knew how and when to propose and push forward on any particular issue. And he did quite a, as disastrous as that time was, with all the issues leading up to his presidency and the disaster that was the Civil War. The country came out of it probably the best that it could to become the country that we are today. Yeah. And I wish we had a guy like that right now, with what's going on, but that's not how it works. So historically, I always go back to him, and then I think the founding fathers, even with all of their particular personal flaws, the system that they set up with the Constitution and the form of government and the experiment that they were able to launch, the people back in that time many lost everything in the Revolution, and they would have been better off probably leaving things alone. That generation is still fascinating to me. It's harder to study than the Civil War. You have a lot more. Well, there's a lot on the Revolution, but it's farther in the past, and the writings are. It's harder to study. But as a group, I don't pick one person out of that group. Whereas I go to Lincoln in the mid-1800s. Mm-hmm. So that's my historical. I'm really interested in U.S. history in particular.
So, considering that, can you think of any other president since Lincoln that approximated the value or the decency of this human being? Any other president comes to mind for you?
I would go with. I think I would go with Teddy Roosevelt.
Teddy Roosevelt.
Teddy Roosevelt, not Franklin.
You don't like Franklin?
Well, it's not that I don't like him.
I know.
But it's a lot later in history. I don't like some of the policies, and mostly not economic wise, but more on that was a rough time. You have World War II and the Depression, and unfortunately for our country, we're still in the middle of segregation, and
today, huh?
Yeah, and so people didn't have the opportunity, and it was just a rough time, and Franklin Roosevelt had his own issues and prejudices and such. So, but Teddy Roosevelt seemed more genuine and real to me, even farther back. San
Juan Hill, huh?
San Juan Hill, yeah. Well, he was just an individual. He was real different, just like Abraham Lincoln. And Roosevelt wasn't supposed to be president. They stuck him in to be vice president to hide him. And of all things, McKinley was assassinated, and this guy they were trying to hide ends up becoming president.
You're a real student of American history, huh?
I'm not the most astute, but I am very interested in it. I think I would be what you would call an enthusiast. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that book, what's her name?
Team of Rivals. Doris Kearns Goodwin.
Yeah.
Team of Rivals is the book.
Team of Rivals.
Yeah.
Man. I've been saying that I'm going to read that, once I have a couple of months.
Yeah, it's very detailed. A lot of people are detailed in it. Good book.
Thank you.
Yep.
One more question before we go to the subject.
Okay.
What is doing good? What does that mean? If a person is doing good, what are they doing?
They're contributing in some positive way without making something better, and not keeping others from doing what they want to do or achieving their desires.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, who am I to judge you and tell you what you can and can't do,
Mm-hmm.
or do things that actually hurt you. Some of them, and we say that, and it's easy when you're talking about one-on-one contact. But in a society situation where you could be contributing to good or bad,
Mm-hmm.
or negatives without even knowing it, which I think is probably a pretty common case in our world of how many billions of people do we have now walking around?
Too many.
Yeah, there's a lot. And everybody's got their own hopes and desires, and everybody's not necessarily always on the up and up. They're looking for an angle, and there can be corruption. So I think in the ultimate world, you would do good as if your activities and your actions and don't hurt anybody else.
So then, on the scale of doing good or not doing good, where do you come out personally? Are you doing more good than you are the other side?
That's a tough question.
Of course, I have tough questions.
You do, gosh. You should be on CNN or Fox News or something, huh?
Well,
actually, most of the thing you think you do all of these good things, but I think the majority of our activity have like the butterfly effect. You don't know how it's really relating to good or bad. You want to we all generally want to think we're doing good, but I would imagine that if you become aware, let's just take
you're
something
talking
like
about you now. I'm talking about you personally.
I'm talking about me personally.
Okay.
But I contribute to it. Now, billions of people doing the same thing.
Uh-huh.
In our everyday economic lives, our lifestyle,
Mm-hmm.
our consumption, you may or may not be doing something good or bad. You don't even notice it. What's interesting is you can go change from a gas-powered car to an electric car. Okay, sounds like the electric car would be a less carbon footprint,
Mm-hmm.
but you have to take back the design, the manufacturing, the end of life with the battery. You could end up having a larger negative impact than you would have believed, or than you know.
Overall.
Yeah. So I think a lot of it is you feel like you're doing the right thing, but you maybe not. Who knows?
I have a judgment. See this sign?
Yeah.
What's that sign?
Be kind to even unkind people. They need it most.
Are you?
Not always. I'm sure that there are some unkind people that.
You duck pretty good,
Yeah.
some of these questions. Pinning you down. I don't want to do that and make you uncomfortable.
Well, yeah. I could make something up, but I don't want to do that.
Okay,
That's what my wife says. If you don't know the answer, you just make it up, and it sounds good. She believes me.
Mm-hmm.
But then she also says, "I know when you're lying because your lips are moving." You never get away with anything.
I shouldn't have opened that box can of worms. We'd rather stop and take a break.
Yeah.
And come back and talk about the topic.
Okay,
It's so
good.
critically
I
important.
can get out of trouble now.
You on in
He's going to do
post-production.
in post.
Yeah, okay, so we're back. Surprised. Thanks for staying tuned. And for you viewers who missed the opening of the show, Conversations with Dr. Don is an ongoing series of 1-hour standalone talk shows where I interview interesting people, like most of you out there, and like my friend Rick. And we're going to be talking about the importance of preparing an advanced directive. And his name again is Rick East, not North, Rick East.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get started here. I have some questions that I'm going to ask you and prompt the conversation because this is really so important. And you've done such really good research in preparing these questions for us to talk about an advanced directive. What is your intention of discussing preparing an advanced directive, the importance of preparing an advanced directive? What is your intention for doing that?
Well, I thought it might be good to make people, number one, aware of what an advanced directive is, and the importance is to get people educated and give them resources so that they can actually execute one, because it's very important. You don't want to wait till you're in crisis mode. So I want to just make people aware so they can advocate for themselves. Now, I'm not a professional, I'm not a doctor, I'm not clergy, I'm not an expert in any sense of the word. I'm a regular person who actually, me and my family, prepared these. And we followed a process to do it, and it worked very well, and we got that set up and put aside. So it gives you, it's like insurance, you know, it gives you some comfort level. So my intention here is to just make people aware and provide some resource. And then I will share my experience of doing my own too, if it helps.
Of course, I'm sure it will, yeah. Your list of comments and questions are very thorough. I keep saying that because it's true. So what is an advanced directive?
Well, an advanced directive, it's a legal document that allows you to express your wishes on how to manage your own end of life. It allows you to choose a person who will make decisions for you in the case that you can't make those decisions on your own. It's very important.
And that can happen to any one of us.
It can happen at any time to any one of us.
Unless it's a heart attack and you're like that, yeah.
Exactly, yeah, these things can happen. So you want to have, good to have control, or at least have your wishes carried out.
My wife and I have advanced directives, yeah.
Okay, good for you.
And it's comforting to know that if the surviving member of the couple doesn't have to worry about the surviving person having to do all the stuff that's required, that's been done ahead of time.
Exactly. Yeah, it's intentional, and it does require some work, but it's worth it. Just a few notes on the advanced directive. It's one, you don't have to do it. I mean, it's not something that's forced on you, although there's a lot of, if you go to the hospital, or sometimes you speak, when you're speaking with your clergy, they may encourage it heavily, but it's not required. It's not something you have to do. If you do, it is a legal document and then gives you some power there. The advanced directive, excuse me, I have some water here.
You're talking about the family situation and how you first got deeply involved in how to prepare an advanced directive.
Yeah, we'll get into that particular down the road, but for the directive becomes in effect at the time you sign it, and the other thing is if you do one, you can revoke it or change it as necessary at any time. So it's just important is doing your will or a living trust or any other document that way where you would like to have your desires carried out and assign people that you trust to be able to carry that out in case you can't do so yourself.
Mm-hmm. So, you actually prepared one for yourself, but
Yes.
you were going to talk about the family and how you first got involved.
Yes, yes, I will. And yes, we did. We have prepared one. My
Yeah.
wife, me, and my father-in-law, we prepared one in 2012. We did that
Not
back
too
in
long
2012.
ago, huh?
Yeah, not too long ago.
And that must have been quite an experience. And you mentioned it took 2 or 3 nights to sit down together and have a discussion about the points in an advanced directive.
Yeah, what we did was, well, the thing that triggered us, a number of things triggered us to do this.
Yeah.
One of them was, I don't know if you remember the Terry Schiavo case, but this young woman had a heart attack in 1990, and she was in a vegetative state. They did not have an advance directive, but her husband was her legal guardian. And he, with discussions with her, felt that she would not want to live that way on breathing tubes and feeding tubes, and that they should be removed. But her parents were the opposite. They thought, well, if there's any hope of her coming back, and some of the physical responses while they visited her, they thought she was still there and could maybe come back. They didn't want to, quote, pull the plug too fast. Well, this went on for...
On their child, yeah.
Yeah, this went on for 15 years, and it eventually was a big deal in the news.
Terry Schiavo, I think.
Terry Schiavo, yeah.
Yeah.
And eventually it went to court, and she was allowed, they were allowed to take her off the life support systems in 2005, 15 years after her heart attack. And she went through the end of life, you know, the dehydration and a lack of food, and died, you know, eventually. I don't know how long it was, but the tragedy was the fight with the family, and the fact that she's laying there in this vegetative state. We don't really know what's going on with her.
And the suffering of her parents.
Suffering of the parents and the husband, and then the legal battle, and then it becoming so public. That was one thing that triggered us. There was also, let me just double check here.
Sure.
Yeah, after my mother-in-law died, my father-in-law moved out here, and my wife was more and more involved with him on a day-to-day basis. So that was another thing we started thinking about. What if something happened to him? The other thing is, then we both ended up having some medical issues. My wife suffered from cancer, and I actually had what they call a mini stroke, a TIA. We talked about that on another show.
Yes.
And in 2013, I had that. So my wife's cancer was in 2011. We didn't have an advance directive during that time.
So that got you thinking about it.
Yeah, and we did it in 2012, and then of course 1 year later, I ended up in a situation where it very well could have, I could have ended up in a vegetative state, depending on how things went. I recovered completely because of her quick action and the doctors. But in the case that I wouldn't have come out of that, then she would have had to make decisions for me. And because we discussed it quite a bit and we went through this process, she knew exactly, depending on any scenario, what I would desire. And she would, as hard as it might be in some situations, she would carry that out. I was always kind of afraid of getting stuck, you know, in one of those states where just sometimes it would wake me up at night. You know, I'd get into a kind of a panic attack, and it was scary stuff. You know, what would happen if you were in this vegetative state and you were in this terrible situation, either pain or just awful, and you could not communicate out to tell somebody to pull the plug, and you're just inside there, and they don't know what you want because you haven't spoken with them or prepared this advance directive.
So one of the things going on in your life that's a source of anxiety or nervousness or worry you don't have that anymore because you've got an advance directive.
Yeah, two pieces to that. The advance directive doesn't all of a sudden make your panic attack go away, but that's different types of work. When I've had, between my wife and a very good friend of ours helped me with that quite a bit. I feel like I have choices. And then the advance directive, because we've discussed this so much, I trust my wife more than anybody, and she knows what I want and vice versa. And we have that in our legal document, our advance directive document, so that when outsiders were to come into play, it wouldn't be like in the Shivo case. The husband, if I remember correctly, claimed that he and his wife had those discussions, but they never put it down on paper, so nobody else knew. And then they're just speculating. And that was one of the tragedies of it, at least when you prepare and sign, and then you provide them to your copy to your lawyer, copy to your doctor, and maybe your clergy. People know what is desired based on a particular situation, because you do describe more than one situation in your advance directive, and they can carry out your wishes and feel confident that they're not betraying you, and they're not shortchanging you, and that we don't get into this battle of he said, she said, and like the Shivos did. So I highly recommend that people get familiar with what it is, and you can. I have this is the workbook.
Yeah,
it's available at. It's printed by Oregon Health Decisions, and we picked our copies up at the hospital when we were at Providence. They're usually available in doctors' offices and many medical buildings, but usually it's one of those things you just walk by.
Yeah.
And we grabbed it, and that brochure has how to have a discussion. It provides a worksheet, and then it provides you the form to develop your advance directive.
And we have a thing, Oregon Health Decisions. There's a website. Yeah.
Yeah, and get a lot more information from them. And like I said, you can probably get the workbook online or pick up a hard copy as I brought here. I've looked online and they're available there too.
See?
So, but I think a lot of times people, this is one of those things you don't want to talk about. Mm-hmm. So people will put it aside. They may have heard of it and they go, yeah, you're right. Maybe your clergy or a family member or somebody is encouraging you to do this, and it's that's important, and you never get around to it. You just procrastinate.
Yeah.
And I think the general procrastination, it's a lot of us, but I think most of it is these are hard discussions to have.
Yeah.
People don't usually like to talk about planning for their funeral. Where are you gonna, what funeral home are you gonna go to, and what are the plans for that? And it's just not very comfortable to do that. So it's something you put off. And this is the same way, I believe. It's just hard to do.
I am a lot older than you are, and I'll be 91 this year. And I find as the years have been going by recently, those kinds of thoughts occur from time to time. I don't dwell on them or worry about it. And I've taken care of a lot of the things that normally I would worry about if I hadn't learned or hadn't talked to somebody like you before now. And I've gone so far now, and about 3 years ago, I wrote the message that I want on my tombstone. And I go back
to that, huh?
yeah, and I go back, and I don't remember now what it says, my most recent version, but it hasn't changed very much. And because I think it does something good for me. Now, if my survivor, my wife, is younger than I am, and she doesn't have to follow my message on my tombstone, but it gives her an idea where I'm coming from, to provide her with something besides something she might find that I don't want her to put out there. But
Yeah.
my point being that it's okay to look at the future, and in the end, as we're approaching the future, and we're all gone by the way. So a sense of comfort. So it's a thing that she doesn't have to worry about anymore because
Yeah.
she knows that my wishes are in writing.
Yes.
Have you done anything like that?
Yes, that's what the advanced directive. When you're done with this process, you produce and you have witnesses. It's a legal document.
Yeah, I've got them.
Yeah.
I don't remember. We did them carefully with a very good lawyer,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, it's important to carry it out all the way. You don't want to you don't want to have a slip up in the case of the time that you really need it. You want it to be what it should be. But the process that we did, as I mentioned, we kind of set back. These discussions at night were pretty rough, and we would look at the scenarios that they provide in the workbook. Things you don't think about, and you need to think through them. And it was interesting to my wife and me because I don't know if it was generational or what, but many times my wife and I were on the same page with how we would want our situation to be managed. And my father-in-law was in a different space. And so the first thing we had to do is make sure we really all of us understood the question and the state that they were describing before you answered what you would, how you would have it managed. And my father-in-law was a Depression-era kid, World War II vet, working through the 50s, 60s, 70s type for his career. And his main thing was he's a survivor, and he didn't want to be given up on. And my wife and I probably, maybe in some ways we were more spiritual than he was, that if we got into a situation where, and the way I would describe it is, where the soul and the body, or the partnership that we have that allows us to do this, doesn't work anymore, I'm fine with moving on. I don't want to stay in that state. And that's not just a quality of life state. Quality of life where you're struggling, but you're alive and you're still you. I'm talking about where you really there's just no more partnership. It's not even at a disadvantaged partnership where your body is hurting or you're mentally challenged to make your own decisions. This is where there's really the only thing stopping the split is that the heart's still beating. and it was interesting, his questions, and we would make sure, all of us would make sure when we ran into one of those tough questions that we really understood what was being described in the scenario.
Sure.
And then you go back to your beliefs and your knowledge of the situation. And again, you can consult with your clergy or doctors or experts. You don't just have to do this all on your own and get opinions. Eventually it comes down to what you believe and what you feel, and then you answer the best way that you can. And I wanted mine to be in a case where if my wife ever had to make a decision for me where I was in the vegetative state or whatever, that she would not feel bad. It would be a sad, tough decision, but that she shouldn't feel guilty or sad. I always wanted that to be available, and that's what makes me more calm going forward, that things are covered, is because she knows what I would want. I know what she would want, and we've discussed this, and we've had the challenges and pushback, and we've gone through that already, and we are at peace with the decisions that we would need to make.
Sure.
Based on those scenarios. And I don't think that every possible scenario is covered in this. They do a pretty
Sure.
good job in this book of getting you to think through many different things that can happen. And I think that it's enough that if you had a variation on a theme, that your decision maker could come to a decision that would work. I would never feel bad about my wife pulling the plug on me because if she did it, I'm going to thank you. It would be a situation like that.
All right, I'm going to get quite personal in what I'm going to say about myself.
Okay?
I'm not sure if you want to do that for you. I'm not sure that where this would fit in the discussion of the notes you've got here. But I don't know how it came up between us, but the question was, what is it that's really personal, that's very personal for you that you want me to know about? This is what my wife was saying.
Mm-hmm.
And among the things, there are 2 or 3 things that were just deeply personal and very private. And I don't want to smell.
You don't want to smell?
I don't want to smell. If I'm in my bed and slowly dying before we pull the plug, I want my wife to be sure that there's no smell about me, old person smell, or urine smell,
Yeah.
or that they haven't cleaned me well enough.
Gotcha.
If they're taking me and cleaning me, because I remember I've had 11 brothers and sisters, and my mom and dad died when I was a kid. But I remember the smells in the house as they're dying, getting old, the smell of death. And it's because they're not keeping the dying person clean.
Yeah.
And if I'm laying there and I can't really talk or anything, and I'm aware, the sense of smell is so primitive. If I can smell myself and know that you didn't wash me well enough, then this is going to cause me pain if I've only got another 30 minutes to live.
Sure.
So whatever I do, please keep me clean. Isn't that weird?
That's not weird at all. No, I know. I think I understand what you're saying there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's like me. I don't want to be stuck. I don't want to be screaming from. Sometimes it's like you're inside this glass house and you're pounding on it, but they can't hear you. Yeah. There's no more stop. Just let me go. And then there are times that this is where you, with the medical profession, you have to trust at some level when the scientific information about the state that you were in, and when you get to that point, then don't feel bad, the decision maker. But if you have not had these discussions, that's first, that would be hard to do. And then second, you may not even be able to do that.
Yes.
Because
but the brain is still working enough where you're aware of what's going on and you have feelings.
You're aware, and nobody can make a call for you because you didn't do this work. So I don't want to leave it to chance. So we got it done. We got it posted. And like I said, I would recommend that for anybody, that they look into it, that they think about it, that they consider having these discussions with the people they trust, as hard as they are. And it not only would benefit the, quote, patient, but the family of the patient because of not having to scramble or cause dissension. This is what the person wanted, and you know that because here it is. You did the work, you had the discussion.
And then there's a sense of peace, as we talked about earlier on, that is out of the way. And it's,
yeah.
We neglected to talk about spirituality. So say a few words. What do you mean by spirituality before we sign off? Because we're almost done.
And so my belief in that is I've been more and more drawn into the fact that we are part of this universe. Everything is connected. Mm-hmm. And the matter, energy, it's already here. It just constantly is recycled or changes form. Mm-hmm. And our spirit and our body, and we pass through that. We're not really isolated beings or individuals. We're part of this bigger thing. Do I understand it? There's a lot to learn. I'm barely touching the surface. But I think my spirituality is more than a simplistic belief in just God, and because of that, everything is the way it is, and I don't question or I don't think about it. I think it's God or Source is a part of this universe, and it's all mixed into one, and we're all connected in some respect.
Now they're going to yell at me unless I tell them that I want you to look at that camera and tell the viewers anything you want to say to them about what we talked about or anything else that you didn't say to me.
Sure. The most important thing
Look at that
for the
camera
day,
and talk to
I'm
them.
looking at it. Most important thing is have a conversation and communicate. Talk about your concerns, your fears about these medical issues, spiritual issues, or end-of-life issues, really. Get involved with that. Have those discussions. Communicate is probably the biggest thing. Communicating with someone else that you trust. And then more formally preparing an advance directive, having it in place so that your family can have peace of mind and you can also have peace of mind and take control of your own management at the end of life.
And he's speaking for me too, so thank you very much for doing that. Now we have time maybe for one or two public service announcements. The Nation, that's a publication that I've had for years and years. Go to that website and learn about The Nation. It's a progressive, old publication for a long, long time. Go to that. And my favorite one, the American Civil Liberties Union, the ACLU. Without the ACLU, our civil liberties would be further down the tube than they are right now, the ACLU. So that's one of my favorites. So, and thanks for watching. And remember KFC. Not Kentucky Fried Chicken, Dr. Don's KFC. Kind, friendly, and charitable. To you too, and you too, especially you. And you too, nurse. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.